and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And this year, there are quite a few fun activities for the Halloween season. And we are going to kick off first with the Haunted History Tours at the History Museum. My guests are Seamus McGrann. Welcome, Seamus.
Thanks for having me.
And George Wythe, or maybe the ghost of George Wythe. I'm not sure exactly which it is, but we'll find out, right?
You will indeed.
Now, I have been on this tour before, except I think it's growing every year. I mean, when I went on it a few years ago, it sounds like you guys have a lot more surprises in store.
We do. Surprise is indeed the right word for it. No, it's this is going to be the third year we've done the tour of this kind, and it's grown a lot. We are having more characters each year. We are doing more of an outreach to get more people involved this year, and there's already a lot of people that are interested.
I saw the casting call.
Right. No, and we've got a good response from that, as well as people from some of the local theater groups and universities and schools that are going to be portraying various characters from the city's colorful and illustrious past.
Well, you know, it was a really fun thing because it was historical, and you learned some of these stories of early Hampton, but because a lot of it was done in the first person, and because you're moving, it didn't feel like a history lesson. It was like quick and colorful, and I thought it was just a great thing for adults with limited attention span, not your history buffs necessarily, but you know, adults, kids of almost all ages. It might be a little scary for the super young kids, but I really, I thought it hit an amazing range.
Well, thanks. And that's really what we do at the Hampton History Museum is, you know, bring history to life, even, you know, dead folks for our tours. But, you know, the city has so much history, and you know, every era of the nation's past, I mean, important things happened here, the major battles that took place. And so there's a lot of residue and things in the ether that we can conjure up to bring people from these different eras back to life for the week leading up to Halloween for our tours, which do leave the museum at 7 p.m., and they'll take place Monday through Friday, so the 26th through the 30th of October. And we leave the museum, go into St. John's Church graveyard.
Perfect setting for a Halloween activity.
It is indeed, and some of the people who are buried there like to come out and greet our guests on that evening. And then we go down.
And that's what I will say. It's a little startling sometimes, but it isn't really scary. But let's talk about who we might meet in that graveyard.
Well, several people. Interesting that Hannah Tunnell is one of the first people that you meet, and she was a woman who warned the Confederates about the approaching United States Army during the Civil War. And so she wanders the graveyard, still sharing that news with people, so she's someone that you'll meet. You'll also meet Confederates and Union soldiers. One of the very first Confederates was killed in a battle very close to here, well, actually injured and then later on passed. And then one of the last Union soldiers that died in the conflict, injured in Petersburg, but brought here to the Veterans Hospital and passed. So this is both territory that they share. As well as someone else that you'll meet is Charles King Mallory, who was the fellow who owned the first 3 slaves that escaped to become contraband, known as the Contraband of War. They petitioned the Butler, General Butler at Fort Monroe for their freedom, and thousands of enslaved people escaped to Fort Monroe. And you'll also meet and hear some of the stories, the arduous journeys that these people had to go through to reach freedom. So there's a lot of connections with St. John's Church. So
and that's the starting place.
That's one of the starting places.
So Civil War, obviously a big thing, huge in the history of Hampton. But let's back up a second and let's talk to our friend George Wythe. You have a story to tell from Hampton.
I do, in fact, have a story to tell. You know, I find that many people around here are not even familiar with the name George Wythe. However, I was a prominent resident of Hampton, one of its most prominent residents, in fact, born here in 1726. At that point in time, it was called Elizabeth City County. And in addition to all of the other characters and spirits that Seamus has mentioned, I do partake a lot of information onto the tours for our haunted history tours, particularly surrounding the mysterious circumstances about my death.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with that. Tell us.
Well, you see, there are disagreeing reports or conflicting reports of this. My surgeons and doctors all said that it was old age and that there was nothing, in fact, wrong with me. I was just deteriorating naturally. However, I, up until my last breath, was, and still to this day, even on these tours, was very convinced that I was, in fact, poisoned by my nephew.
Ooh, so see, that's the kind of fun stories that you will hear first person when you go on this. There's a witch or someone who was at least put to death for being a witch. There's some pirates, maybe.
Well, definitely. The first woman actually accused of being a witch in the country was from here. She was a midwife. She happened to be left-handed, which is, you know, very suspect.
I'm a little bit left-handed. I'm myself.
Well,
so.
You're suspect on a number of different levels. But the thing that really got her in trouble was she was foretelling the future, particularly of several individuals and about their demise. And in at least 3 cases, we know that those predictions did come to fruition. So while we don't have actually any indication that she was put to death or what might have happened to her, we do know she was fined, I think it was 100 pounds of tobacco, but we're not sure exactly what that was for, but she was definitely suspect. But yeah, that's one of the interesting stories that people may not realize took place here. But yeah, as you're saying, it's like every era.
Yeah. You have pirates. You have maybe one of your most modern is the German U-boat. So tell us about that.
That's a fascinating story. Again, one that people might not be familiar with. But a German U-boat during World War II was sunk in the Chesapeake Bay. And the bodies of the submariners washed up on shore, and they were buried in the National Cemetery. Well, these fellows, too, you know, could be wandering around the streets of Hampton. So you might meet some German tourists that are going to be looking for directions or something like that. So yes, that's one of the more modern stories. Again, every era. You know, we've talked about the Civil War, but also the War of 1812.
Oh, yeah.
Another time the city was buried or burned. And in fact, where Carousel Park is today, there was a home that was used as headquarters for the British. And that house, like a lot of Hampton, was subsequently burned. But so not just the British soldiers, the redcoats that you may encounter, but also their families that might have been along here. So you're going to be meeting civilians as well as military officers.
Okay, tales of when Phoebus was known as Little Chicago, so there could be some gangsters and rum runners running around.
Exactly, as well as flappers and other nefarious characters that would have been associated with the gangsters. But yes, a bootlegger is a very likely possibility of someone that you'll see.
So really a lot of illustrious, as George Wythe is, and also some more questionable characters in our past all come out for the Halloween time frame and make an appearance.
Right. It's Tales of Hampton horror stories, so it really covers the gambit of again, gentle frights, but really to bring forth the stories of things that took place here in Hampton that people may be familiar with, but a lot of stories that they aren't.
And even if you've heard the story, like you just telling it, it's different when the character comes out in that first person voice, as George Wythe does, and it just feels more real.
That's it.
It's a lot of fun. Now, Seamus, how much does this cost?
Well, if you buy your tickets in advance, it's going to be $5, and you can call the Hampton History Museum, 757-727-1610, and reserve tickets that way, or you can buy them the night of the event, but they're going to be more. They're $8.
Well, and I'm going to also say you're going to sell out on some nights because you guys keep the crowd manageable so everybody can hear what's going on.
Exactly.
And I really am going to urge people to make those reservations in advance to ensure that you get to experience Tales of Hampton horror stories.
Yep, but be sure to pay for your tickets in advance and save a few dollars, and you might want to go a second time.
Okay. Well, thank you, Seamus, and thank you, George Wythe, for appearing a little bit early for your show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I hope you will do this. It's very fun for the entire family. Maybe not the littlest, but anyone who's ready to hear the stories you've heard tonight, but told in the first person. And really do make those reservations in advance because it does sell out. Thank you for watching.